Hello, this is Input, a video game news show and Irrational Passions podcast for the week of November 10th, 2017. I'm your host, Jarrett Green.
I'm Logan Wilkinson.
I'm Jurge Cruz.
What do you just cut around? The video people will figure it out. Yeah, let's just start over.
Excellent.
I'll cut the beginning of the video. Do you want me to? I can pull this up on my phone.
Yeah.
I didn't get prep work. To be fair, y'all, you never said
anything.
anything.
Fair, we
did. I've been telling you like all day. Yeah, that we have a doc ready.
And we actually went over this very thing.
Yeah,
at this table.
I didn't know I had to read from the doc.
You don't necessarily
just for like
to
see what you have to say.
Yeah, to know when you're supposed.
I like
to
to just keep it long with what's happening too. See where we're going.
So, input 16.
Only 53 away
I was
from
going
the
to
big
say
one.
that. Don't worry.
Okay.
Good work.
All right. I'm ready.
Are you ready now?
Yes.
You sure?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we just going? Oh yeah.
Just start over. Yeah.
Hello, this is Input, a video game news show and Irrational Passions podcast for the week of November 10th, 2017. I am your host, Jarrett Green.
I'm Logan Wilkinson.
I'm Jurge Cruz.
I am your guest host, Alex O'Neill, editor-in-chief of IrrationalPassions.com.
And consolidation by top members of any particular industry is nothing new and certainly not much of an eyebrow raiser when it comes to certain business circles. But the video game industry is small enough that any acquisition can be considered a big one. EA buying Respawn is no AT&T, Time Warner, Fusion Dance, but it's quite the conversation nonetheless. And it's something that happened like literally as we were driving in today to hang out and start Extra Life.
Literally as we were writing the doc for this even. Like,
for those who don't know, the basic story is EA has made a bid that looks official and looks like it's going through all the procedure to buy Respawn for like $455 million.
Correct.
Which is incredible. Respawn, if you don't know, developers of Titanfall and Titanfall 2, two ex-developers from other places you would love to know. And it's
Infinity Ward?
Infinity Ward, yeah, Call of Duty. So
Vincent Pella.
Clearly this is EA trying to bolster their shooting, I guess, repertoire, as if they really needed to. It seems like they were doing fine up until this point. Battlefield 1 was met with critical acclaim. Battlefront and Battlefront 2 look like, man, maybe the critical acclaim wasn't there for the first, but the sales were. And people are speaking pretty highly about Battlefront 2 so far. And I have a hard time believing the sales won't be there for that either.
Yeah.
They're investing, be that next year, the year after. So it seems strange to try to diversify in something they don't really need to diversify in, besides the fact that they'll get this IP that has value somewhere. What that value is I guess iffy because it didn't sell all that well. At least not well enough for Zampella and Co. to like be confident that a third one is coming. But I mean, I guess the other idea is you don't necessarily need to buy Respawn for Star Wars or for Titanfall. You can buy them for anything else, like a Star Wars game. You just happen to no longer have a developer
And
for.
it's specifically interesting because they ran into this issue earlier last year when they had literally Battlefield up against Titanfall, and the numbers didn't come out in Respawn's favor with Titanfall 2. Not really the big hit.
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
It's like a weird mea culpa for like, oh, by the way,
That's what I was. That was my
die.
theory that I proposed to Logan. Like, hey, do you think if Titanfall 2 didn't hit a specific threshold, the catch was that EA gets Respawn, which is speculative, and I don't necessarily want to bring speculation here.
$455 million seems like a big oops.
Yeah,
and according to one Jason Schreier of Kotaku.com, this story sort of begins with Nexon, actually, who owns Maple.
Seems like a lot of
a
lot of stories begin with some Chinese
It's either Tencent or
Nexon at this point.
Having interest in purchasing them, but since EA is partners with them, they had first dibs and they pounced on that. It seems. We'll see where that goes.
It's better for Respawn because if Nexon bought them, they'd be making a mobile game for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
What's good for us,
right? Yeah, I guess it remains to be seen how good it is for them because we are assuming Respawn's getting picked up, and the the low hanging fruit is Titanfall 3, and everybody will get to sit in the same room, and the same development team can make the game and the product they love. And the truth is, what actually happens, what EA is really good at, which is cannibalizing these things and throwing all the pieces to wherever else they want to go.
And Jarrett, you mentioned you probably hit like the main point and main thought, like where does this fit in their portfolio, really? When you think about like they want to purchase Respawn to add another shooter like studio, like more people that can make shooting games because those are easily monetizable, or it doesn't fit in perfectly for me. It's a bit confusing, and I think for a lot of folks it was surprise. Well, a lot of people already think that Respawn was owned by EA.
Yeah, that's a reaction I've noticed on Twitter just by cursory looking for the discourse around it. Is like many people just assume this is already. EA was already like some sort of subsidiary or some sort of provider for Respawn, because I mean their only 2 games were published by EA, which I guess you can see where some can assume that.
And I think like in a perfect world, EA made the EA Partners deal, which Respawn was the only only survivor of. They made that deal so that EA could associate itself with better brands, right? And that people would associate better brands with them and think that they were just together. I can't really remember any of the other.
There's People Can Fly with Bulletstorm, for sure, and that's the only one that's on top of my head that I can think of. I don't know how many.
There was at least one more, but I can't think of it. And you know, Titanfall was a huge success, and especially coming off of what happened with Activision and Infinity Ward, I think if I were to wonder what the worst case scenario of this is, it's Respawn going into the EA game manufacturer as what Activision has done with Sledgehammer. Infinity Ward.
They become the off-year Battlefield.
Yeah, developer. Exactly. They become the
Second
visceral
dice.
that makes they're told Hardline. They have to make Battlefield Hardline 2 or whatever that ends up being, and it's actually good, or like it's better received, let's say, than Battlefield Hardline was. I think that's the worst case scenario, because that's literally what they were doing at Activision.
It's true. And like if Anthem wasn't a thing, then I would see it, because it's a sci-fi shooter that you can adapt to fill that sci-fi shooter, I guess, genre that's becoming like a big thing.
Yeah.
But it's not an MMO. There's really nothing about Titanfall specifically that's that much different than anything else they're doing. Well, I mean, that's not true either. You know, Titanfall is a different experience playing it, but I'm trying to think on a top level, like from a boardroom table, like what do they see in Titanfall 2 that's unique in comparison to the other things that they provide? And I really don't know. Battlefield 1 was, I feel like that's like, I mean, now considering it was successful, this could be one of many trips into that era, into that time frame for a shooter. But I think going into Battlefield 1, everyone assumed this is just like a thing they're doing right now, and they'll be back to whatever's normal afterwards. But now that, you know, Call of Duty is pivoting around, maybe not because directly of Battlefield 1, but, you know, they are definitely encouraged to continue making this World War II game. And
Battlefield 2049, bring it back.
That's what I mean. Like, what happens next? Like, do they jump to the future before Call of Duty does? Or like, you know, what's the next Battlefield look like? Maybe Battlefield becomes like an old world shooter, and Titanfall becomes a new world shooter.
I mean, at the very least, we know that pivot's not going to happen next year, right? There's a Battlefield game coming out presumably next year.
Yeah.
Because Battlefront comes out this year,
and the Mirror's Edge team's probably doing something after that. So.
Not Mirror's Edge.
Yeah, not Mirror's Edge for sure.
And we know that Respawn was making some kind of Star Wars game. They were also working on a VR project.
They were working on a VR World War II project, yes.
So God knows what's happening to that now with the state of things. So I feel like we're just not going to know what EA does with this resource for at least 3 to 4 years. I mean, knowing EA, actually, we might see concept art next E3.
They might have already had it. Or, by the way, I'm glad you bought it. We bought you. Here's what you're doing.
Yeah,
and it's going to be
probably Star Wars.
I have to imagine
that seemed to be the internet
Star Wars.
Consensus. Like all through Twitter, everybody seemed to be A, surprisingly to me, excited about this news, and B, like almost unanimous that it was going to be a Star Wars game. That they were going to basically be like the game that everybody wanted from Visceral is not going to happen with Respawn here.
I mean, I think it's realistic to expect that EA will allow Respawn to have more of its bigger IP now that it is an internal studio versus a partner. So that is exciting because Respawn is an incredible pedigree. I think Titanfall 2 is a phenomenal video game. And they also have pedigree past that. So if they were giving an IP like Battlefront or like Dead Space, for example, something that would that has a history and that would sell, I think it would bring Respawn a little bit more to the forefront as far as a quality developer, because more people will buy that game versus Titanfall 2, which is still a generally unknown quantity, which is a positive outtake.
Would it even be a great disservice to Respawn, though, if they ended up being whatever, like, here's the ashes of this Visceral game, here's what you get to make now, this is why we bought you?
Yeah.
Like, you want them to be the Titanfall team and to do their own thing and have their own visions and express their own things. But I mean, no one really knew. Like, I'm not sure Respawn knew what was next when Titanfall 2 sales numbers came in. They're like, well, this is not what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel, and again, it's more speculative, but like just going off of EA's behavior in the past, giving them like, hey, here's your chance to make something great in a franchise that will sell, and if you do well here, you have the opportunity to expand and grow. Just like, they did great with Titanfall. You get to make Titanfall 2. You get to work on a Star Wars project. You get to work on this VR project. They had their hands in a lot of pots. I think it's weird because it sounds like, EA is like a doting parent that rewards good behavior, but or profitable behavior more accurately. But I think that is how they would operate. Like when Dead Space did well, Visceral got to make Dead Space 2. When Mirror's Edge didn't do well, nothing happened with that, and for years later. So I think that is how they're operating right now, and I think it's reactive and not proactive, and it's not going to work.
Well, it hasn't been working. Like, EA's been trying to be Activision for, it feels like 5-ish years now.
Right.
In EA's defense, I don't know how Activision does what they do. Like, I
don't know.
have zero
which
idea.
Is true.
Yeah.
Like,
I think they got lucky and they just kind of continue to do it.
Absolutely. They're a legitimate money factory, running off of Blizzard's money, running off of Call of Duty's money on the Activision end, and now Destiny's money. Like,
and King.
Like they're literally just running in money. It's unbelievable, honestly. Right. But I see EA. I don't know. I don't think EA is going to treat Respawn like they did Visceral, because I think the general consensus is Respawn is a better developer than Visceral was.
Right.
That I agree with. And EA does have, a reputation for letting, like you said, the good studios work, like BioWare. BioWare does whatever it wants for the most part.
That's a great example.
Exactly.
Mass Effect Andromeda is a poor example of EA's real relationship with BioWare.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to, they're trying to make up for lost time and fill in whatever gaps they're missing with the Activision sort of strategy. So,
and also, that wasn't BioWare Prime. That's not Edmonton.
Exactly. So, but, you can see the loot boxes and sort of the move to make a thing more open world, and what fails in Andromeda, and you almost see the tension between the developer and the publisher in the game.
Yeah, and I think if whatever the Visceral game's name was,
Project Ragtag.
Ragtag, I think if Ragtag came to fruition, we'd get that exact same feeling.
I think so as well.
Yeah,
especially like Jason Schreier's piece about like the Dream Team making Ragtag, and then the B team making Hardline and Hardline DLC. Like, it illuminates a lot of
But with that same reputation, EA also has a reputation for closing down a lot of studios that they acquire. And this was sort of the immediate second thought after the surprise that this acquisition happened, was like, well, I think Respawn is in the danger of being closed down. Even now, I think Ghost Games, who makes Need for Speed, might be in trouble with Need for Speed Payback, but we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I always wonder like how we got to the point where we're like, let's do another Need for Speed game, guys. Fast and the Furious is lit.
Jurge got there real quick.
Yeah.
But it's like, who looks at the stats and is like, you know what we're missing?
You think that when the movie didn't do well, that would have been the first.
That's true.
Sign. But yeah, that is probably one of the the biggest conversation with this is like, well, I don't know what the future of Respawn is, because I don't know like what EA wants to do with them, and also I don't want to see Respawn get closed. Specifically because everyone really liked Titanfall 2, or at least people are very passionate about that game. I think it's a very good game, Titanfall 2.
Yeah. I think another question is Titanfall 2 a game that needs to be done by Respawn? Because I know EA would love. I think EA would like things to work as they do, but I think they recognize Titanfall 2 as an important brand, but how much do they recognize Respawn as the important, like the determining factor of that brand?
That's true.
Like if Respawn gets the Star Wars thing or whatever thing they get, if they get Battlefield Hardline 2 and that game does not so well.
I mean, if you purchased Respawn for that much money, I would hope that they understand.
The money is the important part
Yeah.
here, because they're definitely not treating them like Visceral. And you can imagine they're spending this amount of money on Respawn for more than what they can do as some sort of serviceable developer that's just making IPs
Not just
that
hands.
they want them to do. Like they clearly want something that they see in Respawn and what Respawn does. And the best example of what Respawn does well is the Titanfall IP. So
yeah, I can't fathom a world where like Zampella lets this happen again, right? Like,
right, exactly.
Like the thing is, like, he started Infinity Ward, you know, like they started Medal of Honor, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah,
and that's gone.
Yep.
That's
it
EA.
breaks my heart every day.
Yeah, that's like also EA.
Oh,
no,
man.
what if they just make a Medal of Honor game?
Oh my, there's the dream. There we go.
Remember that little guy called Medal of Honor?
Yeah, but like Vince made Infinity Ward, he saw that franchise that they started, Call of Duty, get like auctioned off to other studios, right? And just turn into a factory, and then was forced out, and then this happens again. I just can't fathom like them. I feel like part of that agreement had to have been like, no one touches Titanfall but us.
I have to imagine. Yeah, I mean, and if EA really finds them valuable, I can't imagine them not agreeing to it.
Yeah,
they'd rather just shutter them than like take it from them.
Or like the other situation is like, we're done with Titanfall and we want to do something new, right? Because that was the other problem with the Activision deal, is they couldn't do anything new.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Jason says in his piece that he has insider knowledge that Titanfall 3 is a thing that's happening. So
I believe it.
Yeah.
Just because, just like I believe Mirror's Edge Catalyst was a thing, right? You know.
Yeah, that's probably been a thing to start and stop for several years before
Like,
we ever heard about it.
Titanfall 2 was still exceptionally well received, even if it didn't sell well. And it had a lot of conversations about it. So I don't know how far that's going to get you, you know?
But yeah. And with Closure, that has sort of been a pretty big narrative the last few weeks, but more specifically with Telltale. A lot of bad news out of Telltale.
Yeah, and like you said, this is like the last or most recent of sort of a string of closures and layoffs this week. Starting in Friday, when me and Navishan did Irrational Passions that day, Motiga and Runic. Well, Motiga, most of that staff was laid off. Just enough to keep Gigantic going for whatever indeterminate amount of time, and everybody else is laid off. And Runic was shuttered, essentially. Everyone, Runic, the makers of Hob and Torchlight 1 and 2.
Yeah. Massive bummer.
Kind of big, because Hob was released, it was well received, and I don't know what the sales were like, but
Reviewed by you.
Reviewed by me. I didn't like it as much as everybody else did, but I can see how someone can, and it didn't seem like a game that would ever have been something that was like a bombshell seller. Like, this couldn't have been a make or break game. Like, there was no way someone pitches this kind of like Zelda clone and it's like, this is going to be the game that makes us all the riches. And if it doesn't, then we're closed. Like, you should have just closed them.
Which makes it more tragic, because it's likely when that game was coming out, they knew they were going to get closed.
Right. They had to have known, because it was almost, it's not immediate, but like 2 months later, it's you know, and that game's been developing a long time, so I really don't know what the story is there.
I know it previewed well, because I previewed it.
Yeah,
you did, yeah.
But then, you know, several days later, Telltale has like a fire sale almost, like, and that it's kind of felt like maybe not something that was definitely coming, but it felt like a looming sort of fear that, you know, this rapid expansion of Telltale was going to, like, there's a bubble about to burst.
Very rapid.
Yeah.
I think they moved buildings like twice.
Yeah. Because
how many do we know? How many were laid off?
90.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I do know someone that was laid off from Telltale I believe it was in San Francisco, right?
Something, I know it's near San Francisco. It's in California, because I know a lot of the industry ends up
The
being
person
a
I
lot
know
because,
is in San Francisco, so just as a disclose that.
but it's sort of crazy to think because 5 years ago when we were doing spoiler casts for Walking Dead and Wolf Among Us, when things started really exploding for these guys, it never seemed like things were taking off in an unprecedented way, right? Like they were bringing back the story narrative adventure game, and they were basically printing money to do so. It's a great, and it's funny because there were a couple whistleblowers asking the question, like, how can they afford to continue like getting all these licenses and making all these games? Like, and it was a good question, but we had just assumed everything's fine. Like their staff's blowing up, their buildings blowing up, like they have all these irons on the fire. Like clearly things are working out, but like it's definitely possible that they expanded their, I guess, projection before the market expanded with them.
The case that immediately came to mind when I thought of this was Harmonix, when Rock Band hit really hard, and they also staffed up real quick, and then suddenly it started to disappear. I don't think it's as bad as Telltale, because for Rock Band it sort of was a cliff. But yeah, I don't know. You think like these licenses aren't cheap. Making the deals with Marvel
Batman
and DC,
Marvel and
literally the biggest properties in the world.
And going over to Gearbox and getting Borderlands. The Wolf Among Us is a licensed product.
Yeah, Image, right?
Yeah,
so
Image and Fables. Like this is something.
They have like more licenses than I think.
Most
other.
I mean, even technically, The Walking Dead's a license.
Yeah,
like the Lego. They did a Lego game, right?
Minecraft.
They did a Minecraft game. Like
that's Microsoft.
And they, so when you think about it, like, I can see how it can be difficult to turn these things into like real money.
There's a second season of Batman going on right now that all of us, I think at least Alex, it was in the conversations where like those are one of the most significant games of that year. I haven't heard a single word about it.
Yeah. Well, I haven't even played it. So
that's more to the point too, but they keep spending all this money on the license and everything, but none of the games that they've released have had the same pop as season 1 of The Walking Dead, and like maybe Wolf Among Us, but I don't think that sold great. And it's like I feel like it's been a law of like kind of diminishing returns for going on 4 or 5 years now. Like each game I feel like makes a pop, but a slightly smaller pop each and every time until like Tales of the Borderland was really well received critically, but commercially I feel like that wasn't the case at all. Like I waited like a year or two to play that game, and Batman, like the Telltale series, I think again was a slightly more mixed critically received game, but commercially I felt like it had a pop, but significantly smaller than what even Wolf Among Us did, which was again smaller than Walking Dead season 1. And honestly, The Walking Dead can be the best, less and less invested in, right? Like we all adored season 1 of The Walking Dead. We all, I think it's fair to say, have mixed feelings about season 2, and then I don't even think the three of us played season 3, and Jurge didn't finish it.
I didn't finish it. No.
And so it's like, I think that's a great example of Walking Dead and Telltale going out and getting these new license and everything, but increasingly kind of getting smaller and smaller returns.
And hopefully the Wolf Among Us is actually still on the table. For
that's a big question too.
Because they made a big, so like, yo, we are doing this for you guys.
Well, and then they were doing it for Jarrett.
Yeah, really, just you guys. They, and Walking Dead is a good example because of the time frame. Like it spans their entire career basically. Like, and you can almost see they're almost like little litmus tests, like of what the industry is looking like.
Because like. What season 2 was 2014, right?
I want to say 2014.
Yeah.
And season 3
it was.
Season 3 was this year, 3 years later. It was shown somewhere in the middle, but
then
there was 400 days in between the first and second.
But like it almost feels like season 3 was a reactionary. Like we need this. We need something that's going to make us money.
Right.
Well, because I think Game of Thrones flopped, for example.
Oh,
like that was huge.
Terrible.
Yeah. Well, that didn't help either. But I think honestly the quality of these games has honestly slumped in recent years too. Like I think
it's also always been inconsistent, really.
Like,
if we really think about it, like,
but more like the most inconsistent recently. Like you can feel how much the resources are being split. At this point,
and the fact that the engine, if anything, I feel like has gotten worse over time somehow, and not better. Right, like Telltale's Batman was the worst one I've ever played. Like that game, I mean, I literally couldn't finish episode 5 because it broke me. It froze, kicked me out 3 different times, crashed my system. Like I couldn't even finish these games at this point. Like 5 years since Walking Season 1, like how is it possible the engine has gotten worse with a new console jump too? Like,
well, because they're trying to do more, and the problem is it's getting worse just by staying the same. Like everything's moving in front of it except it. And there's like all these games are different licenses, they're different worlds and different stories, different characters, but they all play the same way.
Yep.
Like if you've played a Telltale game, you've basically played all Telltale games.
And like that I think is a big part of it too. Is I wonder how much competition plays into that, because
Life is Strange.
Yeah, since then they reinvigorated the genre, and now everyone's taking the genre and has done it better.
Yeah, exactly. And Life is Strange is literally just a Telltale game, but it plays better.
Fantastic.
And
Yeah.
it runs better.
It feels better.
It feels better. Yeah, it is just, they were like, cool, that's a great idea, but it, the games play the same since The Walking Dead season 1 in 2012.
Yep.
And that's ridiculous.
It is, and even the ones that are slightly different. So like Batman,
that's a good
isn't different enough.
No,
like I get more action to do during the action scenes, and like I can build up a meter to hit a button and finish the scene. But it's like that's just a different road to the same place, and it's not even that different a road. It's the road next to the one I was taking already.
And it's disappointing because I think they have, in some cases, gotten worse, but in most cases, gotten better at like actually making decisions and branching paths matter. Especially in Batman, I think they did some really clever stuff with as far as like characters that you see and also like end up in different spots. I don't know how that folds out in season 2, but probably not well.
And it's interesting with the announcement of all these layoffs and the restructuring that this was almost the first time they ever publicly announced about technology was even in the conversation, because they did mention that they are looking into new technologies for new titles, and the CEO of Unity is in the board of directors of Telltale.
Woof.
Yeah,
and like there has been, it's a good point, there's been no great conversation publicly about anything,
which is the most frustrating thing for me. Like there's no way you don't know this feedback is coming up, but we can't, you don't understand, we can't stop this train. If we stop this train, it all comes down.
Right. And that's kind of frustrating to know, because Telltale games always have seemed like a genre of game, because they really are. It's one developer making different brands, but they're all the same game, really. They always seemed like something that had such potential, right? Like The Wolf Among Us and Batman become really good examples of that potential, because they're interactive stories, obviously, but you're telling stories of characters that you may not know, or you might have an opinion of that they tell you differently, or they can have an opportunity to completely blow your mind with how they reimagine them. But when they write great narrative, like, because it's interactive, it's another level of sort of being told a story. Yeah. And that's what we were all here for. Like, not necessarily for the game being difficult or anything like that, but you would think by now, like, the writing is, like, they were leaning on the writing and leaning on the licensing. But if those things fail, licensing can't fail because it's a license. But like, if the writing and the license does fail, then what else have you done? Like, what else do you got? And an engine that barely runs, and an art style that's derivative, and with stories about characters you don't really care about
Game
anymore.
of Thrones.
Yeah. Like, and Game of Thrones was long. Like, how are you terrible and fucking longer than everything else?
I think the harmonics comparison is just like really depressingly
accurate.
Yeah.
Where you get the Rock Band 3 and you're like, we're on top of the world, but then no one buys it, but you have all these plastic things you're trying to sell.
It's just like, the solution, I think, is take a minute, take some time.
I think it's like Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed. Take a break.
Take a year off, take 2 years off, build a new game,
build a new engine,
write a new engine, like build a new engine, write a new game, maybe like do a new game.
Yeah, something that isn't this at all.
Yeah. And like break your mold, but like the reality of that is like what, like over 500 people have got to be at Telltale at this point, right?
It has to be,
Yeah,
and this can't be the first. This isn't like the only layoffs that will happen.
Yeah, like you got to like cut almost all that out,
and then you have to reevaluate the licenses you already have access to that you haven't created any property.
And I think there's a genuine fear that you burn bridges with those license holders if you're not producing, if you're not like, imagine the contracts. They would have said like, yeah, we're gonna put out 2 Batman games in a year. What?
Really? Are you sure?
Like, yeah, we can do that. What are they going to look like though?
Right.
Just like, I feel like they've gotten
It
themselves
was
in way
such
too
a
deep.
giant splash when they got that Marvel thing, and no one has talked about Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Oh
At
my!
all.
I had
Yeah,
completely
you're right.
forgotten that. Yeah,
Because they announced it as Marvel video game and then put out Guardians of the Galaxy like a year and a half later.
And like threw it out, and that's part of the problem too. Like Telltale's created this environment where they kind of just do stuff. And in the beginning, people were so hungry for it, had such an appetite for it. They followed their inconsistent launch windows and like really lack of any communication about when anything's coming out or when to expect anything. We were just there for it when it happened. We were ready to consume it. And now that since we're pretty much all done with it, like we're no longer coming to them and they're not really coming to us either. Like they're just throwing it out.
Yeah.
Like they've gotten more consistent, but we've gotten less and less worried about.
Well, I think part of the problem for that is that there's just so many different balls in the air that it's impossible to keep up with it all, right?
Yes,
Like
Minecraft Season 2 still happening.
Well,
I don't even know.
This is the big point of that. Like, as somebody who just literally went back and republished all the IPV like reviews, at one point in time, they had 3 different Telltale series happening, and like intervening months, a different episode happened for each one. Like it was impossible to know what the like launch schedule was, what the release schedule was going to be for these games, and like there would be just long breaks, and like they've gotten better at that. But
Kind
that's
of.
yeah, I mean,
But like it
exactly,
depends on the series. Like Walking Dead, fine. Batman.
Yeah, what is
Shrug.
Guardians of the Galaxy schedule? Like I haven't even heard about
I
this
know
one.
it's
You're
not
like,
finished. I don't
Yeah.
think.
No, it's finished now.
is
Oh,
it finally
wow.
finished?
Great.
Okay, that's yeah.
there it is.
News to me.
Yeah,
It's
breaking
also
news.
worth noting that they have lost talent. Like Sean Vanneman and Jay
Yeah.
Rodkin almost left immediately after Walking Dead season
a great
1.
point.
And a lot of the folks at Telltale also went to go make Night School Studio to work on Oxenfree, which Oxenfree
Also another adaptation of that formula. Like
right, but also like a clear evolution of what they're doing at Telltale.
Well, I think that Life is Strange is too, right? Like Life is Strange, I think, and Oxenfree are such kind of great evolutions on that formula, right? Whereas I feel like when Walking Dead season 1 came out, it was like near universal acclaim, and everybody loved it, but there was also that kind of idea of like, can you imagine what the next thing will be when they kind of like fix these engine problems and they fix these few kind of like slumps in the series and really nail the next game, right? Like we were all so confident that it was going to be a Assassin's Creed or Assassin's Creed 2 moment, and instead it wasn't that. You like either Walking Dead season 2 or even Wolf Among Us to a degree, like it still had almost all the same problems that plagued it, and then over time I feel like it's grown bigger and bigger and bigger and spread more and more in the series and the episodes.
Yeah.
And I don't want to actually, Alex, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, you see the two different payment structures of Life is Strange. Episodic still. Oxenfree is not. It's a 6-hour game ish, maybe 8 hours, depending on how you play it. And I just I think Life is Strange definitely gets the benefit of being a better playing game, but I think like that just like you gotta get off this episodic stuff. Like I think like at this point, especially when multiple series are overlapping with one another, it's just it's
impossible to keep up with.
Yeah, it's doing you more harm. Like we don't know what is happening.
They kept referring, their PR always referred to it almost as like a television sort of programming. Like here's our and it's,
seasons with a length that you can expect to see the end of.
The thing is, like I could look up whatever some TV show that's going on right now. I can look up when it's going to skip a week, right?
Right.
Telltale, maybe when the next episode is coming out. Everything after that, like they need dates on everything.
Yeah.
And what's the real capacity in the market for like a AAA narrative game maker? Because
single player games are dead apparently. So
yeah, I heard that.
But it's more importantly, these games have always been niche. Like it's
Until Dawn also.
Yes,
phenomenal adaptation of that. Like
also, so Until Dawn first party had like the safety net of Sony in case this would fail. It turned out it didn't fail. It actually like succeeded way beyond.
I bet you they thought it did, right? Like there was not a big push behind Until Dawn.
Oh, absolutely. They thought that was done.
But
they put it out in like
Sony
August
treated it
instead of
as it
October.
probably should have been treated. Like this is a narrative game. There's a very specific audience for this, and if it expands out of that, we're playing with bonus money.
Yeah.
Where Telltale is like, we are the money. So this is we've invented this, so clearly they're going to keep coming back to us.
Yeah.
And as they expanded, Dontnod's not small necessarily, but they're not gigantic.
Yeah.
They've made other games that weren't this, but like I don't think they made Life is Strange and are moving forward to make more narrative games like this with the intention of
it's also
taking
worth
the genre on their back.
And it's also worth knowing that Telltale also has a publishing arm, and that all these products have to go to store shelves, and they also publish other stuff. And I can't tell you how many clearance copies of Telltale games have I seen, because for all these series, they are putting a product in stores and then they are not moving.
Yeah, and they also do this weird thing where the disc will come out after around episode 2, and it's like you got to hold on to this.
Yeah, you pay it for it now,
Pay up
and
front.
the episodes will come out eventually.
Yeah, it just like that. The calendar is working against them. The licenses, I think, are working against them now, and the expensiveness of those.
That's the big thing. Like, if you're going to be a publisher, and I mean, you think it would make more sense being a publisher and publishing your own games, but think of any publisher, Tiny Build or Developer Digital. Like, they publish a lot of games yearly, and they don't run into this problem because they have expectations that I feel like are way more in balance.
Also, to look back to what we started, like, we don't know necessarily where in California, but like the Visceral story that Schreier posted, like, really taught me that overhead, man, it's killing you. It is hemorrhaging you. And they might have like so many employees.
Yeah.
I don't know how of them are necessarily there, but like the overhead on that has got to be
the scary part. Yeah. When they said that a team, like an employee at Montreal compared to San Francisco is literally quadruple the cost of living is insane.
Insane.
And so maybe there's another conversation to have. And I think we've danced around it when we talked about Visceral, but we're seeing a lot of layoffs, and perhaps this is sort of like the single player is dead. When we see a lot of cases and you start to think, oh, there's clearly a pattern here. It has me thinking, like, is this sustainable? Or is the game just going to always be the sort of churn and burn? We're going to get new kids in here, and they're going to be really excited to work here. We'll burn them out. They might stick around, and hopefully, if they can train the other new guys, that'd be great.
Here's a theory for you. Maybe California video game development isn't sustainable.
Yeah. Right. I think that's the point.
Just like movies moved out of California.
Yeah. Right. And
Sony Ben's just in Oregon, just chilling.
It requires incentivization from other states to like want these people to come here and work in their state. Like Georgia, I use as an example all the time because they have incentivized people coming filming there.
Yeah.
Like every movie
and a lot of TV shows you've seen
filmed or done production in Atlanta because they want you there. And here's some tax incentives, here's some bonuses, here's some extras. Just
Canada is doing that as well.
Montreal,
it's just like that. I think that is a more realistic or more like
I think so
down to earth. Like, hey, like a lot of video game studios are in California, Silicon Valley. I get it. That's kind of like where video games are from at this point. But like,
there's no necessity.
There's no reason
at the same time.
Somebody could what's it? Bioware is a Texas studio. They do Old Republic. And that's like hundreds of people, right? But because they're running an MMO. But I know that's an MMO. It's much more. Like,
it's a different structure.
It's a different structure.
It's free to play, but there's also still a steady stream of subscriptions.
But imagine how much more sustainable that is.
Yeah,
like
because cost of operation alone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like your building's cheaper on cheaper land. You don't have to pay the people as much because cost of living is lower.
Yeah, it's just like I think that is more indicative of the realistic change.
Think about it, like education has been so different now since when the industry started. So people are going to school for 4 years to be game designers. That wasn't always the case. And now that there's generations of people who have advanced generations of knowledge of how to do this. Like, there are smarter people who are more capable of making games who can demand more when they go do so. And that could be demand more money or just demand better treatment or whatever. Like the base of the employees can dictate how labor works if they decide to.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean, unionize, but it does mean be more competitive.
Yeah.
Because there are, like you said, there are places that aren't in California who want people to make games for them.
Absolutely.
And before, like, running to California was a mecca. It did the same thing in journalism and games writing. Before, the only way to write and make money in games, and I mean, I guess in some ways still, is to go to California. But
or New York,
but
newer.
New York wasn't huge until a couple, like the last few years.
Yeah.
But now, especially with writing, you don't need to be in the building to do your job necessarily. And
sounds like Kotaku live off that.
Yeah. Right. Waypoint, I believe most of the writers in Waypoint are all site.
I know Patrick Lepp because
he's Chicago, and I think Rob Zachney he's not in New York as well.
He's in Boston, I think.
It's something like that. And like, so there's no requirement if you want to make a game, there's nothing in Silicon Valley that you need from Silicon Valley to start a game studio.
I will say, I'll posit this. I'd love to see more development processes like Moon Studios, which is worldwide. And they're like, obviously it's a much harder way to develop games because, all your meetings are digital and boardroom meetings are digital and asset exchange is going to be more difficult. But like, I appreciate like that Microsoft kind of took a shot on them with Ori and they're giving them another shot. And Ori, in my opinion, is a phenomenal video game.
Right. It's definitely possible to create good games without having to, live
100%.
by the structural mantra.
Yeah. And that's like across multiple countries. So I would love, and again, indies are where we're looking for the new ideas. And I think they're doing something really important.
Even CD Projekt has sort of a worldwide grasp. Like it's all based in Poland, but they did plenty of work here that get sent back, especially in Cyberpunk. Apparently,
but there may be some work environment.
Yeah, there is definitely work. There
right?
always has been. That's like a cultural thing that is surviving into this new world that they didn't intend to make survive, I think.
And just one other kind of facet is like the lead artist for Broken Age was not local to Double Fine. Another just like a specific pull, and like he did all the art for that game. Which
I am shocked that Double Fine is still in San Francisco.
Yeah,
I'm stunned.
They have to move soon. Like I can't imagine. Like I like I think they're a phenomenal developer, or at least one of the more creative ones. But
I agree.
Yeah, they got to get out of there
because they're tiny.
Yeah,
I don't know.
A great way to make money is just put microtransactions in all your games.
Whoops.
There you go.
Like Take-Two did. Take-Two, as you know, one of the biggest publishers in the world. You may know Rockstar, who develops the most popular game by sales of copies on the fucking planet in GTA 5 that people still go out and buy copies of.
It's in the top like 5 every month.
And it's still popular because it's online is fucking gangbusters, and they make the majority of their money on microtransactions through the online features in GTA 5. And they make so much money. It's almost fucking disgusting. Like 50% of Take-Two sales come from microtransactions. And that's not the only game Rockstar has microtransactions in, but it's the game. That's probably all of GTA 5 sales have 50% of Take-Two sales. That's incredible. Like, if anyone was hoping microtransaction would somehow disappear from their video games, know that as soon as this was published, that will never happen again.
Yeah.
In fact, there are publishers and developers thinking right now, like, how the fuck do we do this?
Yeah.
Because this is it. This is the proof we needed that this is absolutely what we need to do.
And with Rockstar, it's especially interesting because when reading, you see that the Hauser brothers weren't really down for an online. That was more something that Leslie Benzies pushed.
They called in the Ben.
And the Ben press release, and this sort of was this in a financial earnings call? I assume they're releasing LA Noire.
Yeah, let's take all this money we made and have pushed out this single player story based like pseudo narrative, almost GTA.
It's put on Switch.
With absolutely no
and VR.
Absolutely no way to monetize at all on Switch and in VR eventually. I'll remember that people love that game, right? And Team Bondi was a fucking shit show.
Oh god,
Jesus, man.
But you know what? Like, if this is how they're going to spend their money, then please go right ahead. And also, don't forget Max Payne 3.
Let's get Max Payne 3 on Switch, and then we'll talk.
But yeah, the like,
which is something we kind of already knew, right?
Well, yeah,
like,
totally.
It's like, but I feel it's so hard because man, Grand Theft Auto is such an outlier.
Absolutely.
It's what it is incredible, and and Grand Theft Auto 5 exists because basically all the ideas they have are just iterations of games already being made that they put in their game. Like they're not developing new games; they're developing new modes for this other game. Like we all got on Epic for Fortnite, basically just picking up and dragging and dropping PUBG into their game. But I mean, GTA 5 had done that already.
Yeah,
right. They did,
and they do things that are completely ridiculous too, like shooting or like driving cars off of planes and trying to land them on a floating target. Like they do all types of
They
shit.
do a lot of stuff that if you were to do like an investigative or some like embedded, we go into the GTA Online community.
It's like what was the PlayStation
PlayStation Home?
Yeah, it's like what Home was supposed to be.
Oh man,
but
Okay.
actually fun.
Yeah.
And you don't have to stand around waiting for a T-shirt in line or some shit. Like Home was so bad.
It's crazy because like I played GTA 5 online or Grand Theft Auto online. Maybe the week it launched. I've never touched it since.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's unrecognizable, especially
It's
more
completely different now.
higher player count on
completely
current gen
different now.
consoles. So
and it's more important because you're never gonna see a Rockstar game without multiplayer anymore.
Oh yeah.
So now it's like how you implement, like what can we imagine this sort of implementation looks like because it can't just Red Dead 2's online can't just be cowboy version of GTA 5 really. I mean, but they can probably get close.
Can you imagine
Yeah.
the pressure on that online team?
Jesus
There's so many
More
meetings,
power
like
to
what
you.
we gotta
Yeah.
hit, like how we gonna get.
Because the other Red Dead online was literally just like deathmatch. Like you run around in a desert and shoot each other. Like
Yeah.
this can't be that. It has
but
to be
you
something.
could like rob stuff, right?
You can
like,
free roam too a little bit.
Yeah,
more
yeah,
than
there's
you
a
could
free
ride
roaming, and
around.
you could get in posses and like go rob people. Or
yeah, the
something like
posse system. That's what I was saying.
but it wasn't. It was nowhere near what GTA 5 is, and that means like there's nowhere they're taking steps backwards.
I
at
mean,
this
like
point.
what the only comparable thing is what like Overwatch, right?
yeah.
And that's
It
like
has to be.
barely like it's like it's like a blip on the radar
Yeah.
versus and that's Overwatch. Like Overwatch makes money.
Yes.
But
Not
I mean,
GTA
really any
money.
Blizzard game. Like you have Overwatch and WoW make
Yeah.
lots of money in microtransactions. You have also Heroes of the Storm
yeah,
makes lots of money because MOBAs always do.
Yeah.
League is probably one of the leaders as far as
I
making
guess
money in
like League would
microtransactions.
be the comparison to GTA Online.
Kind
right?
of because Riot makes all of their money on microtransactions.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
League
And
League of Legends is
licensing
what
for like
biggest-
the pro scene, but like any money they make from this game is from microtransactions because the only way you spend money in this game.
That's like, but just to think that Grand Theft Auto 5 is
a single player game
is
with-
like you compare this to League of Legends, which is like
which is
bonkers.
completely it is a game stripped down for competition and taking your money.
yeah,
Yeah.
it lives for and making you sad.
Yeah.
like that's because what League is still what the most played game in the world, or the most,
it
was for some time, but
it wasn't from some at this point it has to be. I mean, it's not on Steam, so it's hard to make
yeah,
a real solid. The only way you'll know is if Riot tells you.
Yeah.
They
don't have to.
and they don't have to exactly.
And also, this isn't exclusively to Rockstar. It's all. This is a Take-Two initiative, correct? Or is it only Rockstar?
It's Rockstar right now, but I can't imagine. I mean, if you look at other Take-Two products,
Let's say
like,
NBA 2K.
look at 2K and
yeah.
2, they all have microtransactions too. So like, I can't imagine
WWE
any.
as well, right?
Yes.
Yes, as well.
Oh yeah,
Well, that's-
I heard that one's
Nah, it's hard. It's quiet for that game right now.
That's the thing to me. And there's a great quote in the article where it's the market is telling publishers that they love microtransactions, and publishers are listening, right? Like people are definitely going to be seeing Take-Two with everything they have and the huge amount of money they're making from microtransactions in a game, whether it be GTA or NBA 2K or anything in their Red Dead Redemption, I'm sure too. And it's like people are watching this, and people are watching. People might complain and moan and cry about microtransactions, but people also use microtransactions. People also spend money on them
And
clearly.
it's such a small
so it's-
amount of us that really complain. Like
Exactly.
we're kind of in a we hear it a lot because
Yep.
we're in a position to hear it a lot.
yeah.
But like in reality, most of this country will spend $10 on whatever on loot boxes.
Well, I mean, I think that goes back to the fact that I think that we play games differently than most people do too, right? Like I feel like go through games quicker than the average kind of gamer, quote unquote, does. Like they spend months with one game. I feel like they spend way more time and invest more money in that product, and they don't think it's a big deal because that might be the one of like 3 games they play in the entire year, 4 games they play in the entire year. So it's a better like bang for the buck, a better investment to make it that way, to spend $100 in microtransactions, whatever it might be. And so it's like, I think it's hard for all the people who are kind of super into the weeds of this to recognize that as well.
To bring it back to EA really quickly, this microtransaction bit reminds me of probably one of the most alarming and like quote that took me aback from that Jason Schreier piece was when Amy Hennig was doing meetings with EA folks. Like someone would be like, "So FIFA Ultimate Team makes us X million dollars.
Right.
What's the hook for this game that's gonna make us that much?"
Wait,
money?"
like,
Chewbacca.
Yeah, why are you asking me this question? How many Han Solos can we sell? And I don't envy trying to be creative in that environment because we always say it, you always hear it in the industry, like gaming is a medium where consumerism and art mix and meet, and you can't have one without the other, really.
Yeah.
And you never know that until you work for EA, apparently. Where part of your pitch is how much money do you think you can make us? I imagine Activision has these same conversations. Take-Two probably the same. Ubisoft has these same conversations. Like, making a game in your fucking garage seems like the best way to make an art right now. Which I mean is like in any industry, really. I'm sure the music industry is probably similar.
I mean, well, that's one of the big takeaways I think me and Jurge had from the Cal Seeley interview, right? Like why he wanted to be kind of an independent developer was this reason, right? So that he could just do the things that he wanted to do and not have to worry about the kind of more financial impact of it, right? Like Emily's Way 1 was a game that you could pay however much you wanted on it, right? And like Emily's Way 2 is a game that was $5 and there were constant discounts and sales on it, right? Like you didn't have to worry about the same kind of financial burdens of this, of having to have 500 people on this team to support, right? And make a 200% profit on the thing. And so I think you see that in the independent marketplace much more than you do in the 3D, like AAA tier. It's just easier to do that because you don't have to support an entire state, basically.
And it's funny too, because I don't know how I'm gonna work this in here, but I had to. I think about Spelunky a lot. Full
Shocker.
stop.
Yeah, right.
But like Spelunky, was a passion project on PC, free, and then got ported to Xbox One or Xbox 360, and then was ported to everything else. And Derek Yu, he made tons on that just because it ended up being one of those things, and I feel like we haven't really had a lot of those things in more recent years, like Super Meat Boy, right? It just blew up, you know? It just happens. It's those one-hit wonders that are in the...
Thomas was alone.
Thomas was alone. What is the guy that did the stealth game?
The stealth game, eh?
Oh, God.
Gunpoint?
No.
Splinter Cell.
Yeah, that one. The European, like the British developer that he made, the last game he made was like a...
Volume?
No.
That's a stealth game.
That is a stealth game.
Bithell?
Mike Bethel, yeah. Thank you.
He made Volume.
He made Volume? Was it called Volume? That's what
he also made Thomas.
It was literally called Volume.
Yeah, Thomas Was Alone. I didn't know he made Thomas Was Alone.
Yeah.
I did somewhere, but I now in this moment. But like, there's also like this weird aspect of like the one-hit wonders in indie developers. Like what FTL probably would be in that list. Less so, but like, that's it just doesn't happen as much anymore,
you're
right? But like Spelunky would be in that caliber, Super Meat Boy would be in that caliber, Limbo, I guess, Inside.
Yeah, that's a great example actually, because I mean, Inside sold significantly better than the second game for Limbo. Inside was the second game. Thank you. Limbo did so much better than Inside did, right? Like it was a kind of one-hit wonder to that, I think.
And I feel
like Inside was burst. I don't know.
I think it did well.
I think it did critically well received. Commercially, I feel like there wasn't the same kind of pop to that and like life to it as Limbo had.
I wonder how well The Witness did.
It's a great question. $40 too,
because that's a good example of someone doing a game one way that we expect. Because Bray just isn't in the games. Clearly, one person.
From that Danny O'Dwyer documentary, speaking to him, like sort of a post-mortem, it seemed like he was pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
And it's now I guess you can play that game on an iPad.
But there's a difference between being pretty happy with it and like what Derek Yu experienced when Spelunky is now available on everything and it's sold it's sold well on everything, right? Presumably. I mean, PlayStation maybe less so because
Stardew Valley's probably
Stardew Valley, would be in there.
I'm sure Shovel Knight had that same opportunity too.
And Shovel Knight, especially Undertale when it coming to console this year. But yeah, like. That is also like this weird thing. So I wonder how much that influences indie development, because I know, say 2012, that was a big influence, right? People were trying to get that, but I don't think people chase as much now. So with that, and then microtransactions on the AAA side, like it seemed like these weird kind of clashing ideas for making money, like being the one-hit wonder, and being the GTA Online.
And
right?
when you have like people like EA where they have they incubate smaller titles, and you wonder like, well, where do these fit? Do they even fit still? Does Unravel like 2 still fit? Does Fee still fit? Does Sea of Solitude? They haven't mentioned a single damn thing.
Right.
Sea of
And this
Solitude.
happens to a lot of like Ubisoft had that same initiative. We're gonna take
Ubi Art games.
Well, Ubi Art was specifically like we're gonna take people from our studios who want to make small games and let them do it. Like they weren't necessarily going out to go find them, but you know, after Child of Light and the one about the war,
Valiant Hearts.
Valiant
Phenomenal,
Hearts.
they're
It,
like we do still like money though.
Even
Yeah.
like they let Ubisoft Reflections make like Row Home.
even
Yeah.
Activision dipped their toe into that with the Sierra brand,
Yeah.
King's Quest.
Yeah, they brought
like,
Sierra
Sierra's
back to
still-
do it.
it's still
Yeah.
and it's
up.
still going, and we don't know what they're doing now. But I imagine King's Quest didn't do that great because I don't hear a lot of people.
But
talk
I can't
about it.
imagine your Activision. You're like, let's bring Sierra back to make old school Sierra games, and then they're going to do a cell blank like
Yeah, like,
gangbusters. There are smarter people than that. in
Yeah.
Activision. Like,
You gotta wonder if maybe there's a sign of good faith.
I was gonna say, is this like a
Yeah.
sort of a charity write-off or something?
I don't know. And like there's that weird indie initiative. You wonder like maybe the AAA publishers are trying to make one of their own one-hit wonder kind of things. But
I'm sure.
I think you saw that with Unravel. I think
Yeah.
they really want Unravel to be big.
And it's weird because how do you then encourage another generation to educate and invest in a future in making video games, knowing that who grows up and wants to be the guy who makes leaves in GTA 7 because that's the only job they can get because there's no money in making an indie by themselves. Who knows? Like the people who are making these things are doing it because they want to, or because they're not worried about the money necessarily. But like you should worry about the money because making a game is difficult. It's time consuming. You can make a game pretty cheaply if you do everything. If you make the music, make all the art, do all the programming, do all the level design, do all the writing.
Like something like Undertale is probably extremely profitable.
Right. So it's possible, but like it's not probable. And you can make a game from start to finish, have really cool art, put it on the store, and never sell a dime.
Yeah.
Which happens to
most
all
of
the time.
Yeah, vast majority.
Yeah. I've like missile cards, Nathan Mine. Once freelancer, then game designer, and then a freelancer again. Went through the entire cycle of making a game 2 or 3 times and didn't sell a whole lot. And it's been eating him all up ever since because he invested time in doing it, made decent games, and just didn't work out.
When it's not even like there can be like fantastic games that just don't get that. There's so many things out there that's hard to get a big pop, right? Like a game I'll go to that Jurge loves is Bound last year, right? Like a game you thought would explode and it didn't, right? And it's like it's so much harder, I feel like, in 2016, 2017 to have the kind of same effect of a Super Meat Boy or Thomas Was Alone than it was.
Journey.
Or Journey is a great example, or Unfinished Swan. Like any of these things, like it's just a different gaming landscape. Now it's harder to make that same kind of pop and like long-lasting tail.
And with that, then I think we're maybe getting a little bit away from the subject, but like you mentioned Devolver, and I think with Bound, like that was a small team in Sony Santa Monica that was incubating these projects, and they were let go when they made Annapurna Interactive, and they're doing pretty. I mean, EA Finch was a game that was supposed to be a Sony.
Idoria.
I mean, they're sort of a young, so I guess we can't exactly see where that's going to go. But Adult Swim Games is out there. I mean, that's owned by Time Warner, but still, maybe it is also people out there like who want to promote it and do the work and show these games in the best light.
The Adult Swim Games is kind of like the same thing that like the Behemoth was, where they were guys who were making games anyway. Like they were making Flash games for free before people were making games, really. And
Robot Unicorn
like was like, oh, people will come to play these games on our website, but like we can just make real games for mobile. Same with Alien Hominid, like when that did pretty well on PS2, and those guys were like, we can actually just keep making games, and we can sell them now, and people will pay for them. That's cool. And 10 years later, they're the Behemoth. But they're still an indie. Like they might have a pretty like sassy booth at PAX, but they're still an indie developer. I don't know how you walk into the industry and decide you're going to make a comfortable living doing what you want, exactly how you want to do it. Like, not to say the art's dead, really, because the art's what you make it. But on one hand, I totally understand the need for returning your investment from these big companies because they don't want to make small things, want to make big things.
Shout out to those studios out there that are just like
That are
living,
just doing it. Like, but like on the same token, when Housemarque closes or doesn't close, but they change, they started changing their entire mantra. Like, it's hard not to be heartbroken because they don't like, these were one of those people who were doing it seemingly successfully, only to realize they really weren't.
I'm very worried about Days Gone.
Yeah,
like, so Sony Benz has been chilling there. Like,
this, and it doesn't just affect indies; it affects big places too. Like
but also Square Enix is trying that too. Tokyo Game Factory.
Oh, right.
True.
Just another publisher that's doing it. But yeah, I think to your point, George, like there are people that are trying to figure it out. I think there's a way to make small creative games and have it be sustainable.
Agreed.
And there are people trying to do that, and all the publishers are trying to create arms of their publishing houses that are doing that. And I think that's at least a good sign that people are trying. So,
well,
positive note to go out on.
On that note.
So as Brett said,
well,
I'm trying.
Thank you for joining us for the first video episode.
Yeah.
Of Input.
I'm looking right into George's eyes.
And thank you, Alex O'Neill, for hosting and joining the squad for the first time.
What's up?
All right. Well,
all right. Well, I'll never.
That was.
And also, see you never.
Yeah. That was.
No, this was excellent. For folks who don't listen to Irrational Passions podcast, the Prime podcast, which I feel like there isn't a lot of crossover actually. Like I feel like this is going for a very different thing. I like these conversations as well. I find it all right.
Yeah,
I'm mostly, on our show we just talk about dumb stuff. So.
It's like about Spelunky and Kingdom Hearts.
A lot of anime.
A lot of Kingdom Hearts, actually.
Too much Kingdom Hearts.
So about Kingdom Hearts, George,
Input is a product of Irrational Passions, obviously, which is a pretty neat little video games news website that we all have written and done content for. That just got a remodel. Looks real good.
Looks real nice.
Big old picture.
All of the reviews are up. I can officially say that every review Irrational Passions has ever written is up, and there's a lot. So please read them.
Over 130, right?
Yeah, 135.
Oh, really?
A lot more work than I thought it was going to be.
Jerry, you wrote a lot of them.
You did write a lot of them, Jarrett.
And they're probably all 5s and 6.
Orc Attack, Flatulent Rebellion. Look it up. It's worth it.
That was my first one, wasn't it?
10 out of 10 review.
That's a bad.
It's a 3 out of 10 review.
It's a 3 out of 10 game, but it's a 10 out of 10 review.
Yeah.
Remember, well, that's at irrationalpassions.com, obviously. But remember, when you're listening to this show and we're just talking off the cuff, spicy about some shit, and are completely inaccurate, you should send us corrections. We have an email address for that. inputpod@gmail.com.
We didn't have anything, but I do want to quickly correct to that EA story. Jason Schreier had this sort of news for early. He saw the contract. The contract had Metacritic tied bonuses for Titanfall 3 and the Star Wars game. So that's all I'll say about that.
That's another podcast.
Yeah.
If you could, since we're still new, even if we're not new, when we're old and gray, you still should go to iTunes and rate and review us. It helps people find us so that everyone else can enjoy the grace and joy of the Input podcast. If you want to find us on the internet, the best way to do so is Twitter. You can find me at Jarrett John. You can find George at J Cruz Alvarez 26. You can find Logan at Lefty Logie, and you can also find Alex O'Neill at Alfighter 27. Do we want to find the Irrational Passions podcast proper at Irrational Pod?
I also want, because I don't know when this episode is going to go live, if we're going to put it up tomorrow or not, but Extra Life is also happening this weekend as well.
It's absolutely happening. And if you think we sound fucking delirious right now,
that is definitely why.
I want to let you know that fast forward to Saturday and shit's going to be fucking rough.
So you should check that out as well.
Yeah. Have a nice house, though. We can blow it up. It's fine.
No big deal.
Yeah.
You've already done it before once. But for Extra Life and for Inputs and for Logan and for George and for Alex, I'm Jarrett. We'll see you next week.